Hello everyone. In this video I'm gonna give another book review of a book that I just finished reading, which I definitely recommend. It's called Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth. I'm gonna first point out this is not the typical cover for the edition that most people have. My dad bought this for me as a birthday gift, and I think he, being my dad, got the cheaper edition. Although it's really, basically, it's a different cover. But I actually think it's a nicer cover. But anyway, onto the book. Many of you probably heard about this book or heard about the author when he was interviewed by Fox News. There was this big interview where there was the woman interviewing him kept basically saying, "How could you, a Muslim, be writing about Jesus? What interest would a Muslim have? You must have some sort of evil agenda. I mean, you're not a Christian, so why are you writing about Jesus?" And he keeps saying, "Because it is my job as a historian." But how could you have an interest? Because I study religion. And in his conclusion, he does mention that he's a Muslim, but he definitely doesn't talk about the Islamic faith at all in this book. He's written books about the Islamic faith. A historian on religion that also happens to be a Muslim. Of course you're probably going to at least write one book about your own faith. But he definitely, I've heard criticisms from scholars. One scholar that I very heavily admire is Bart Ehrman, who basically gave sort of mixed feelings. But he definitely said that Reza Aslan was a great writer. I'm going to say that Aslan definitely explains things very well. He does talk about sort of how historians do their research, some of the criteria. And I think there might be some times where he comes to too many assumptions, but I don't know. But anyway, this book's divided into basically 3 sections. There's the first, which is kind of setting up sort of the background in which Jesus was born and lived. And basically he talks about the war between the Jews and the Romans and the Roman occupation, and sort of how the Jews were allowed to return to their promised land, and sort of basically how powerful the Roman government was. That's the first chapter. The second chapter is basically about the historical Jesus, sort of giving a biography of Aslan's conclusions of his life. Might come to the best we can come to is primarily an educated guess, but he definitely has done his homework. I'm going to be saying that a lot. He's done his homework. He's done his research. And the third section of this book is about sort of how his story was changed and sort of embellished and altered and became separated from its Jewish roots. And basically, originally we have, the title of this book is Zealot. And his conclusion is that Jesus was a Jewish zealot. These were people who were against the Roman occupation, who were standing against the Romans. And part of it is, and this was someone who made sort of claims of made these sort of kingly claims about like the coming of the kingdom of God, and yeah. So yeah, definitely I mean, definitely not this... Yeah, I mean, Christianity definitely isolated itself from much of that. And really, yeah, what was I going to get to? Yeah, he definitely gets into some good details. Some things that stood out for me, some of the comments he made about the crucifixion narrative and the inaccuracies there. Now, a major thing he points out is that Pontius Pilate was someone who was very well known for crucifying, who would always crucify, and who would not be sympathetic to the Jews. So a major inaccuracy is the idea that Pontius Pilate would be sympathetic at all. And I mean, Pontius Pilate gets more and more sympathetic with each gospel that's written. And I mean, each gospel makes the Jews more and more the villains of the story. And I'd already known kind of how that whole aspect had kind of become embellished, how they more and more made the Jews the villains of the story, and that's basically there was sort of the people of the Jesus movement were striving for their survival, and it's like the Romans were kind of winning the war against the Jews, and so it was yeah, or something like that. And so it was, yeah, they were kind of struggling for survival, so that was part of it. I'd kind of known things like that already. I'd known much of that. But one of the things that he points out in this that I realized, wow, that is definitely an inaccuracy. That in the crucifixion narratives, Pontius Pilate says to all the crowd of Jewish people, "This is your king," and then the Jewish people say, "We have no king but Caesar." I cannot imagine Jewish people saying that. I mean, Caesar was the enemy of the Jewish people when they were occupying Jerusalem. So, but he gets into great detail, and he also comments that Christianity has definitely isolated itself from its Jewish roots, which I definitely feel is unfortunate. I think, yeah, I definitely have a love for Judaism. Yeah. But overall, to conclude, this is maybe not the most researched, or not the most scholarly book. I mean, it's definitely pretty researched, but it definitely is explained in, I think, very easy to understand way. I think it's a good book to start with in learning about sort of the history of early Christianity and some of the conclusions people have come to about the historical Jesus. So, thank you for watching. Shalom.